Okay, so it's really dramatic. This is lesson 1, so next lesson we'll talk more about, like, music theory and composition, but this is like an intro. Today's just gonna be like, an introduction class with a short lesson, so they're not missing much if they don't show up. Okay, so if at any point in this lecture anyone has a question, you can raise your hand or type it in the chat, and, I'll try to get back to you as soon as I can. So, welcome everyone to MusicStore Music Study. This is lesson 1. Okay, so first of all, my background. Some of you might know me, potentially. Um, I was the owner of Symphony and Beethoven. I studied music in college and high school. Um, I've won some composing competitions and pretty proficient at violin and piano. So in case you know, you were wondering if you can trust me as a musician, you can decide based off of that. What is music study? Basically, this is an open class for everybody. If you don't know anything about music or you know a lot about music, I'm hoping that you can still learn something from this. Um, whether or not, you have experience. So we're gonna go over a lot of like music theory because I believe that personally having a good like fundamental understanding of music theory will help you actually like transcribe different musical pieces, especially in the game where it's a little bit more complicated, and of course using the actual notes and racks and stuff like that. So what I want to hammer in during the course is um, a basic, or I want everyone to at least achieve a basic understanding of um, beginner music theory level and ear training. But if you already know a lot about music theory, I'm hoping um, that you'll also learn like a little bit, and that I'll also learn. So it's gonna be like hopefully we'll make some discussions down the line, um, and basically how music theory relates to what we're gonna be doing in game. So the lessons will be about an hour. I don't really have like a solid lesson structure yet, so we're just gonna improvise as we go. Um, but I do want to put focus onto music theory. And if you don't know anything about music theory, that's totally fine. Um, you don't have to like there's not going to be any exams or anything, unless our friends at MusicStore want to add exams to this course. But it's going to be like some music theory and also some like in-game techniques that we can use. Um, I'm not like completely up to date of the in-game techniques, so if anyone wants to, pitch in and be a special guest to show how you do something with like racks or whatever, just reach out to me. Okay, so today I've prepared an introductory lesson. It's a shorter lesson since it's the first day and it doesn't seem like many people are here. Um, but I want to give like a brief history on what I know about like music history as a whole. I think it's important to get like the context behind what we're doing, and not just like jump straight into like learning scales and chords and stuff like that. So, without further ado, here's the first lesson: a brief history of music as it relates to the world. So where did music originate? Music is very old. It's as old as human cultures. So whenever people would start like think of like gatherers from like cavemen back in the day, 80,000 years ago, people would need some sort of like um, way to express maybe religious beliefs, cultural beliefs, or even like ways to mourn their dead. So we're not really sure how music came about, but we think it's definitely rooted strongly in cultures that emerged throughout the world as humans evolved and became more advanced. So here on the left is one of the first instruments we've ever discovered from 60,000 years ago. It's the bone flute. Um, it sounds very. I didn't prepare an audio recording, but it's very. It's not like a like what you'd imagine a flute today, and it's certainly not what a flute would be like in Growtopia. But it's it'd be like a very hollow, like mellow, lower sound, and it's made of someone's bones, and maybe not human bones, but like animals that they'd hunt. What do they do with the bones? They can't eat them. They eat like the bone marrow inside. Then they poke holes in it, and then there you go. You have a basic flute. And then like further down the line, people started writing down notations for the actual music they were playing. There's an example of that as well. But that's like from really long time ago. So how did that turn into what we have today? Well, around 1,000 years ago, we have to go back to when Christianity was in its dark days, and I need to preface this by saying that all the music that we listen to today, or that we think is like good music, like our favorite songs, are only possible because of Christianity and the Pope. And I don't mean that like in a religious way, but one of the first ways that Europe standardized writing music was through like church services that they'd have. And because the Christian empire was so powerful, um, they were able to use the standardization in and pass it down to all of like the priests and bishops and stuff that they would use in their services and like mass. So because they needed a way to um, preserve the different songs that they'd write for their services, um, the clergy, or like the upper echelon of like priests and stuff, had to create a notation system or like notes and sharps and flats as we know today, in order to actually pass that down from region to region. And as we all know, Spain was heavily involved with the Catholic Church, and so when they spread all around the world, like to South America, to the Philippines, um, and like when the Dutch spread around the world, like Europe-centered countries, um, we see that the music also spread with it due to this phenomenon. So here's what I was talking about. So Gregorian chants are it's kind of like a monotonous hymn that a choir of I think it was like, I don't exactly remember what the demographic was that was singing it. I think it was like young boys that would sing this in churches, and it would just be like one note at a time, like really sustained. And so you see that on the left here is what that would look like back in like maybe 1400 or 1500. Um, and then of course there's a picture to the right for context. And eventually, even at the time of like Bach, who was very religious, by the way, and he worked with the church a lot to compose like church music and choral music and stuff. He, eventually, like by the time it was 1685, which is when he's born, music notation started looking a little bit cleaner, like on the left there. And obviously, I'm skipping a lot here, but eventually, as people composed for more different reasons rather than just like cultural. People started shifting to making music for entertainment or for like nobility and stuff. Eventually, it all became super standardized in the Western system, as we see on the right there. So today, most like high level people in like universities, professional composers, they use the modern notation, which is the thing that I just showed you. And the reason for that is because for everybody to like understand each other, it's much easier to have one system. And so that's the system that was kind of spread around by the the Catholic Church back in the day, and it eventually evolved to the modern notation that we have now. Even different cultures that don't necessarily use the same like modes and scales as us, like for example, major and minor, um, they still use our same notation with like the five lines and the notes and stuff. Um, that being said, despite the fact that this notation and like Western music, so to speak, has spread so widely throughout the world today, and we see it in like our classical music, pop songs, K-pop, anime music, and all sorts of soundtracks. Despite that being spread all over the world, there's still cultures out there that have kind of their own like original type of music. For example, the pentatonic and gamelan scales, which are found heavily in Asia. And I would encourage you guys to look this up on your own time if you would like to listen to these. The pentatonic scale is an octave comprised of five notes. So it's not exactly the pentatonic scale you're probably thinking of, but they're catered to specific instruments that they might use in like cultural gatherings or other procedures that they might have. Different folk tunes, like in Europe, specifically Austria, Hungary, and kind of like Eastern Europe, they use different modes, like the Dorian mode, which we'll talk about probably in another class, or the like a Mixolydian mode, or something that's not exactly like major or minor. Um, if you've heard like if you've watched like a movie where they're in like Egypt or something, you've probably heard like that kind of music or like desert music. It's originated in this Macam, I don't know how to pronounce it, system. Um, and of course, there's many other ways to write music than you've probably heard, like microtones. So if I were to sing like a perfect, or if I were to sing like da da, that's a half step. But a microtone would divide a half step into like maybe two or three different notes. So you'd end up with an octave that has like 48 or 64 different notes from the bottom note to the top note, right? So just because our notation is widespread throughout the world, it doesn't mean that that's the only type of music that exists. So in that sense, music is very cultural. We grew up listening to the music that we like, and so that's the music that we got used to and that we expect to hear. But imagine, for example, like living in um, some like folk community in like um, let's say Burundi, for example, which is a country, and they might have different musical traditions that they're used to. So they might think like, K-pop is like the worst music ever, um, whereas we think, oh, it's pretty good because they're just not accustomed to it. So I just wanted to put that context out there because of what's coming up on the next slide, which is the concept of the day. So I don't know if I'm going to keep this in here, but every lesson I'm going to try to have like a concept to think about. And today it's the fact that often people say music is a universal language, you know, in the sense that you might hear like a sad song and it speaks to you specifically. Um, but I would argue that it's actually not a universal language at all. And we've talked about this a little bit. Like, music is will make you feel certain emotions based on what you've associated with them as you grew up and what your culture associates with them. So a song that someone might consider sad might sound happy to someone else, for example. And this effect is seen all throughout the world. That's why I don't want to say that's why we all like different sorts of music because that's something different, but it is something to consider when listening to new types of music. If ever you are composing for someone, a client, for example, um, who gives you a song that you've never heard and don't really like, it's just good to keep an open mind about this sort of context. So, um, thank you for the GIF. So with that, I think that concludes this specific lesson. I would like to open the floor to anyone who has any questions um, about the class or about the lecture that I just posted, or if you want any extra materials, I can help you with that as well. Feel free to use the chat if you don't want to talk. Also, any feedback would be appreciated because I've never taught a class before. That's all I wanted to say today. It's pretty late here. It's like 2 a.m., so I can't really go much longer than this, but is using bugs in Growtopia allowed, or would that get one into trouble? I think it depends on the bug. Like, for example, if the bug is you're able to duplicate blue gem locks, I don't think that would be allowed. But if there's a bug that like repeats a note once or twice, I think that's perfectly fine. What is the easiest way to understand notes and create a simple tune? So I think that'll definitely be something I touch on next class. However, if you want the gist of it, the Growtopia system is basically a grand staff um, that can run like different lines in parallel. So, for example, every block corresponds to a note vertically. So you can have like C through B, 2 octaves, and you place like notes which are background blocks. And based on the tempo that you set by wrenching the word lock, you are able to basically play the world as if it was sheet music or like a MIDI file. But yeah, we'll go more into that next time. Can I do a quick survey? Where's everyone from? Put in the chat your country of origin. North Korea, USA, California. Okay. I've been to both of those places. We got Shibal, Indonesia, Batam. That's cool. Very cool. Yeah. Okay, so we got like people from all around the world. I know Rathimus is from France, Paris. That's a very nice country. I would never go there, but I heard it's very nice. Senegal. Okay, I've been there. Not really, but I've listened to music from Senegal. Where am I from? I was born in the Philippines, but I'm living in Texas right now. I could speak 7 languages and I could play 7 instruments. I am the worst person to ask for drums. So I'll have to get a guest speaker for that. But yes, I would definitely love to cover drums. If we could find a guest speaker who's really good at drums, or if Ratimus or Kicks No Way can find one, that would be nice. Or I guess I can look for one too. Do you have any favorite instruments, either in real life or in the game? My favorite instrument is the piano because I've been playing it for a long time. I also play the violin, so that's my second favorite instrument. But if you're talking about instruments I don't play, it's probably the French horn because the range of timbre that you can get from a French horn is so diverse. It can be either a wind instrument or a brass instrument if needed. How did you first start making music in Growtopia? Did someone introduce you to it or did you discover it on your own? I discovered it on my own, and I didn't really meet any like composers until after I had made some songs. But I don't know. I've been playing piano and violin for, let's see, 2025. So 17 years. So it's pretty easy to learn the system in the game. Like it's basically just a staff as if you're writing sheet music. It was pretty simple to translate to the game. Are you using Growtopia Music Simulator, or do you just directly place the notes to Growtopia? So I don't use Simulator, but I also don't currently have access to a Windows PC to use it. I will it tomorrow. Um, but I just wing it most of the time. I won't tolerate the term composer in Growtopia. Growposer. Okay, I'll say Growposer. That's a good idea. But hopefully after you've attended some classes here, you can be called a composer like me. If you actually would you guys like to hear something that I'm composing right now? Uh, like as a proof that I'm actually a real composer. What are we thinking? Why does you fall into the category of classical music instead of the classic pop song? Um, that's a great question, and I'm not sure. I didn't make the categories. You can classify me however you would like. Here, let me pull up something I'm writing. Um, well, a lot of what I've played on piano violin has been classical music. Like I've been in orchestras, and we play, like Tchaikovsky or Beethoven or whatever. And so I just got used to it. I enjoy it a lot. Okay, I wrote this the other day. It's pretty short, but it's like an example. Ready? Anyways, I'm just trying to like show you guys that I'm not like a fake. I actually know music to at least a decent enough level to teach this class. Okay, this will be the last thing I show you guys before I leave because it's kind of late, but should we already be familiar with basic music theory such as scales and notes? So my goal is that if you have zero experience, you can still follow along in class, so you don't need any experience. Um, However, like maybe in a few months after we've covered the basic stuff, then yeah, it'll be like a. I'm not going to teach like the same exact thing every week. It'll be like a sequential thing. So as long as you're like going to the classes, you should be able to learn like the basics and everything. Theory will only take you so far. That's true. You do not need to know music theory to be a good composer. That is very important to know. So if you even want to like skip the music theory stuff and just listen to like the in-game stuff, that's fine too. You don't need to know music theory, and it can be somewhat complicated. Yeah, no problem. Thank you for attending the lesson. I hope people who didn't attend will still be able to watch this. I know Kicks No Way has made a recording, so I'm thank you for that. Um, but yeah, hopefully we can get like some guest speakers and stuff like that, so that I don't have to do like all the work, which is fine. I like teaching class. I realize. Um, so if this is something everyone would want to join, I'll be teaching every Sunday. Hopefully, we can get a better time that works for everyone. I might not be able to teach this late every Sunday, but maybe I can. Maybe I can't. We'll see. Or maybe, if Sunday doesn't work, we could choose a different day. But it's like the only free day I have in college. Well, with that, class dismissed. If you have any questions, just DM me. I'll get back to you within 24 hours or 48 hours or maybe 1 week. Yeah. Thank you, everyone, for joining. I hope, oh, the slides are available under Guild News if you'd like to read about the history of music, or, like, do your own research on some of the things I mentioned in there that I glossed over. I'd recommend looking into maybe some of it. Well, I will see you guys next week. And, oh, by the way, before we go, what topic should we do next week? I'll try to incorporate it in what I have planned. Maybe we could try a simple demonstration of how to compose a short melody in Growtopia. Sure. So next class, I'll probably go over some theory stuff at the beginning, and then we'll do in-game stuff the second half. But yeah, that'll be a good topic. Oh, and make sure you tell other people to join this class, so it's not just like 7 people. Let's have like let's aim for double. Let's get 14 people next time. Because next time is like the actual first class. This is like an introduction. Thank you for a great first day. Don't be late next time. If you're late, you'll get 5 points off your final grade for every minute that you're late. So don't be late more than 20 minutes, please. Maybe I'll make an exam, and if you pass the exam, Rat can give you 20 BGLs. All right, good class. See everybody.